Hey guys! Thank you all so much for tuning into my new episode today. I'm absurdly grateful for every single one of my listeners, and this wouldn't be possible without you guys. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed today's video and turn post notifications on so you don't miss any future episode. In today's episode, we will be discussing how Agnes Hathaway, also known as Anne Hathaway, Shakespeare's wife, was reimagined within Maggie O'Farrell's novel Hamnet. Incredibly, there is very little known about this insanely famous man's wife. She's essentially a footnote in time. But why is this? Why was Agnes so belittled, misrepresented, and forgotten throughout the years? Well, we better get into it. Again, please welcome to The Woman They Got Wrong. Agnes Hathaway, also known as Anne, was the wife of William Shakespeare, the widely famous playwright and poet. She was born within England around 1556 and was a sister to up to 7 siblings according to some sources. Little is known about her life. Historians struggle to find any documentation or record of her at all. Unfairly, Agnes is often portrayed as dull and manipulative. Historically, people have seen her as someone who was an obstacle to Shakespeare's writing rather than his loving partner. Over the past 600 years, people have come to small, unclear, and obscene facts that have depicted her in a negative light, when we in fact have no idea if this is true or not.
Have you heard that crazy Agnes women and that poor Shakespeare? Oh, I have heard plentiful. She's gone and nailed him to the wood, I tell you. No freeing that poor laddie.
Agnes was older than Shakespeare by 8 years, going on to marry Shakespeare at 26 years when he was 18. Something that was very unusual, especially for the time. In fact, Shakespeare needed special permission to marry her at this age for it to be legal. Their marriage was in 1582 and it was extremely rushed. Agnes became pregnant with their first child, Susanna, and children born out of wedlock were seen as
bastards
or
illegitimate children.
Due to this rushed pregnancy and wide age gap, it became a common belief that she went on to trick Shakespeare into marriage and that he didn't really love her. Agnes became portrayed as a trap rather than a loving partner, making a widespread perspective that she was unwanted and a burdensome wife. Her life was simply dismissed as an abnormality, something crude and wrong, not as a life filled with purpose as it should have been. Despite this unusualness within their love, it is still love. This misbelief of trickery that occurred created an unfair outlook on a woman we know very little about, and this view needs to be changed. Luckily, Carol Ann Duffy took the second best bed statement and flipped it on its head. Finally, a perspective that isn't as dismissing or degrading as some of the others. Duffy released a poem entitled Anne Hathaway, published in a 1999 collection called The World's Wife. Within this collection, she goes on to give women a voice who have historically been silenced. Duffy reflects on Agnes and Shakespeare's relationship within this poem and interprets their love as a genuine one, something rarely seen before. She uses the second best bed as a symbol of intimacy rather than an insult. She states, "The bed we loved in was a spinning world of forest castles, torchlight clifftops and seas," showing that the second best bed was not a harmful statement but a loving one. Duffy holds this interpretation as during this time, beds were the centre point of the bedroom, often being so integrated into the room that it was impossible to move. Furthermore, they were so costly that the price of the bed was comparable or even more than the cost of the house itself. Therefore, it's likely with this gifting of the bed, he is symbolically gifting the house itself to Agnes. This does not provide legal ownership, but it does provide a symbolic gesture of ownership and responsibility. As under the convert law of this time, married women were unable to buy, sell, own or inherit land, so this may be a way around this in order to give her ownership. As well as this, the best bed was reserved for guests, and the second best bed was the one that couples or homeowners usually slept in. Therefore, this bed was likely the place they spent their first nights together, had their children, and extremely other intimate events. Put simply, this bed was likely a significant symbol within their to one another, and Shakespeare's usage of this term is likely an attribute of their love, not a dig at his wife, And really, as much as men can be charitable, surely Shakespeare's last words wouldn't be an insult aimed at his wife? This new outlook Duffy presented on the second best bed statement, as well as Agnes herself, is extremely important, as there has been blatant misogyny plastering Agnes's image over the years, and without people like Duffy creating this poem, this depiction would never change. This change is essential to us, to literature, to society, and to the world around us. Yes, this is only one woman's image being changed out of plenty of misrepresentation, but change starts small. Societal dismissal of women has been presented in abundance throughout history, and it is up to us to fix this outlook and recreate this degrading mindset. Doing so with Agnes is a great place to start. Without fixing these issues, they only grow greater, leading to history repeating itself and more women's voices being lost, something we simply cannot afford after centuries of silencing. Duffy reclaimed a voice. She brought Agnes to life despite this fact that many tried to keep her in the dark, and she deserves immense recognition for this. Luckily for us, Duffy was not the only one to reclaim Agnes's image, but O'Farrell was as well. Maggie O'Farrell, like Carol Ann Duffy, reclaimed Agnes's name that was historically misshapen. O'Farrell reclaims Agnes from these false narratives, reshaping her into an emotionally intelligent, loving mother that is entirely separate from Shakespeare. When asked about her intentions behind writing the novel Hamnet, she stated that she wanted to give him a voice, and his mother's and his sisters too. This novel painted Agnes as a wild woman who was deeply connected to the earth around her. She's seen as a healer, a helper, and a loving mother. People seek her for help and talk to her about their woes. She's almost a living, walking Mother Earth, a central connection to those around her. She's no longer in the sidelines within Hamnet. She is key for keeping those around her going. Agnes is depicted as strong-willed and deeply caring. We learn a backstory of her mother and how free-spirited she was raised. The novel states she was tied to her mother whilst she went pouncing through the forest, frolicking in the breeze, collecting herbs and being one with nature. Agnes is giving a story, a past, a future and a life, something Shakespeare and the rest of history failed to do. O'Farrell was the first to see Agnes for something more than a wife and a mother. Finally, we have some words written about the forgotten woman. Finally, she is no longer resented by the name Anne, but Agnes. Finally, she is seen as bright and lively, not ordinary or dull. Finally, she is seen as someone who is loving and devoted, and not a burden or an annoyance. Finally, Agnes is seen. Also, side note, just a little something that's been on my mind before we move on. Am I the only one that thinks it's so refreshing to see Shakespeare as a nameless character, someone who was merely a husband and a father? I think that me and many other women out there gave this a good chuckle. It's like a breath of fresh air, having a man in the corner where a woman normally lay. He was not once referred to as Shakespeare, but simply the father, the husband, the Latin tutor, or the son-in-law, a fact I think we all can find a little ironic. Lastly, before we wrap it up here on Monologue with Maddie, I would like to pay just a little mind to some other women that have been painfully misrepresented throughout history, just like Agnes. Firstly, there was Anne Boleyn. She was a Queen of England and has been historically seen as power-hungry to justify King Henry V's break with the church. As well as this, there was Rosalind Franklin, who was known as the Dark Lady of DNA. Her X-ray work was extremely important in discovering the double helix structure of DNA, one of the most significant discoveries in genetics. Despite this, her co-workers, Watson and Crick, used her data without credit and won the Nobel Prize. So sadly, we can see that Agnes was not the only example of women that was suppressed for a man. Well, that wraps it up here on Monologue with Maddie. Thank you all again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode, The Woman They Got Wrong. Bye!